Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Khalid Abu Aisha. I'll be reacting to Saajid Lipham's latest video.
And people will hurl insults against people like me for saying this stuff and try to frame it as if we are just trying to protect the rulers. But no, we're trying to protect the Muslims. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome all viewers. Now, I know the past month of some of the back and forth between myself and other individuals, it can be triggering, it can be tiring, it can feel like an emotional roller coaster. I know we all want to get along. I know some of these things, they're just stressful, they're confusing. But the reality is, this life is a test. And part of this test is learning our religion and trying to act upon that beneficial knowledge. And now
Okay, that's an interesting beginning by Brother Saajid. I've been watching his channel for since a year or so. I think at first he made some interesting videos that's just sort of general about Islam. I think that's how he got popularized. But actually, I think he's the one who's been making a lot of videos about others online, whether it be a brother on TikTok, Riyadh, whether it be on Daniel recently, whether it be on Mazen Abdul Azim and Hizb Tahrir, where he brought Knowledge North, the faceless guest. So I don't know about him trying to get along with everybody. Let's watch.
Nowadays, with so much misinformation being spread, if things aren't clarified, then the consequences can be devastating. And subhanAllah, Allah is the best of planners, and things are really playing out in a way that make the truth clear and manifest, inshallah. So today I really want to show how the underlying ideology that certain people are pushing is becoming obvious. And I ask that Allah make this beneficial, and I ask that Allah guide us to the truth and cause us to accept and implement the truth. Now, about 1 month ago, I posted a video entitled Dangerous TikTok Dawah. In that video, I brought attention to the fact that certain dangerous groups are pushing their ideologies on a platform aimed at children, such as TikTok. The groups that I mentioned specifically.
Okay, so I don't know about this word dangerous. That's a pretty loaded word. I mean, as Muslims, we're dangerous. We're described as dangerous by the kuffar for the last 20 years on the war on terror. So I don't know about Saajid's choice of words when it's dangerous. These are loaded words. What do you mean by dangerous? Kuffar view hijab or niqab as dangerous. What do you mean by dangerous? So that's something, it's quite a loaded word. And TikTok being in a platform for youth, is this some sort of a plot? Actually, it's a very popular platform. As a matter of fact, Facebook and other platforms are dying off. Lots of adults, lots of people are on TikTok watching all types of videos. So to make it seem as it's some sort of a conspiracy to spread views to the youth, that's trying to create some sort of some sort of conniving image of brothers like Riyadh, who made a video about sovereignty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when he was talking about the king or the queen's sovereignty, and he's responding to that. And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a sovereign. Anyways, we'll get into that, inshallah, a bit more. Let's just watch this video.
Specifically, were the Khawarij and Hizb Tahrir. Now, one thing about people who are walking in the footsteps of the Khawarij is that they never want to be associated with the Khawarij. This is because the Prophet ﷺ clearly warned against them. So even the most hardcore Khariji would never identify as being from the Khawarij. In fact, they themselves would refute the Khawarij. However, they would refute this group by really belittling and misrepresenting their true beliefs.
I do define. Okay, so Saajid doesn't clearly define who the Khawarij are. Studying at Al-Azhar University. Obviously, he'll have a label for that. But there's definitions for Khawarij. So he hasn't really clarified what he means by Khawarij. Because they do have a technical definition. Inshallah, I'll bring some notes I have from my class notes to define that. So Saajid, you studied at Medina University for 9 years. So do you have any class notes for what is defined as a Khawarij? Is simply saying a ruler who rules by man-made laws is he a khariji? That's a good question for you, because there are going to be some surprising statements which you'll be surprised with being claimed Salafi.
Otherwise, you'd be able to put two and two together and say, wait a second, that sounds like what you're pushing. So even though over a year and a half ago, Abdul Rahman of Knowledge North and myself put out several videos about Hizb ut-Tahrir, it was the video showing commonalities between the two groups, which I posted a month ago, that really made the guilty catch offense. So even when this individual made a response video clearly and blatantly exposing that his beliefs really did stem foundationally from groups like Hizb ut-Tahrir, some people came out and defended him and his ideology. And this is because such people obviously share many of the same beliefs as Hizb ut-Tahrir. And I've said all along that Hizb ut-Tahrir and the Khawarij, they're not exactly the same. However, they both do share certain foundational deviations. And if you understand the history, the beliefs, and the reality of both groups, then you'll find that one thing both groups heavily focus on is rebelling against the rulers.
Okay, so this is a pretty broad stroke statement. As a matter of fact, Brother Mazen Abdul Azim, mashallah, great brother, he made a video responding to Knowledge North and Saajid. And as a matter of fact, he invited Saajid to talk to him or discuss or debate with him. However, Saajid, for his response is, you're not worth debating. As a matter of fact, he wasn't willing to discuss with Muhammad Hijab, bigger figures in the social media. So, of course, he's making claims, this person has foundational similarities to the Khawarij, which is what? At the end of the day, what will become clear is anybody who discusses the invalidity of the rulers in the Muslim lands, like the 50 nation states, post-colonialist states created by, on the paper by the British, Sykes and Picot, the British and the French, these drawn-out borders and these rulers from these royal families or democracies, they're in charge, of course, ruling by man-made laws, the law of dayooth, as the ulama of the Salafis themselves call dayooth, which I'll show a little bit later. So anybody who agrees that they are dayooth, the legal system is the hukm of dayooth, the hukm of jahiliyyah, he calls them khawarij, which basically means he will have to call some people khawarij as well, that he claims to follow.
And this is the clear path that such groups lay out for their followers to walk. But they'll usually hide this fact because most Muslims can see the severe danger of such rhetoric. However, I think because so many people have been defending the rhetoric of groups like Hizb ut-Tahrir over the past month, this individual here, a member of Hizb ut-Tahrir, felt emboldened enough to blatantly incite khuruj on TikTok.
Yes, we are allowed to rebel against the rulers in the Muslim land city. Yes, we are allowed to rebel against the rulers in the Muslim land city. Yes, we are allowed to rebel against the rulers in the Muslim land city.
Now do you see the importance of...
Okay, so I guess Saajid might have been practicing some DJing, bringing it back. There's the whole TikTok. It's like a minute long. I'll actually add it right now so you can watch it.
Are we allowed to rebel against the rulers? One of the clearest evidences that we are allowed to rebel against the rulers is the hadith in Sahih Muslim. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا بُيْعَ لِخَلِيفَتَيْنِ فَاقْتُلُوا الْآخَرَ مِنْهُمَا, which means if the bay'ah, pledge of allegiance, is given to more than one ruler, more than one khalifa, kill the latter of the two. So if we are allowed to rebel against just a second khalifa who's implementing all of Islam, how exactly is it haram to rebel against 50 plus rulers who rule with other than Islam and ally and collude with our enemies? Clearly the answer is yes, we are allowed to rebel against the rulers as long as there is an Islamic permission for it. One of the permissions is if there's a second khalifa, because we are forbidden from having more than one khalifa. We're forbidden from being divided politically as Muslims. And two is if the ruler rules with other than Islam. And therefore, yes, we are allowed to rebel against the rulers in the Muslim lands today.
Okay, great. So that was the whole video. As you can see, he quoted a hadith about the two caliphs. So just to take a small clip and post it, come on, bro. That's not cool.
Of warning against such groups, do you realize how important it is for you to be able to identify such groups so you can protect yourself and your family from them? In my last video, I highlighted how such groups manipulate texts from the Quran and Sunnah to falsely push their ideology. So you really shouldn't be listening to them because they're going to confuse you, attempting to lead you astray. But given the reality of social media today.
Okay, so this is another, bit of a red herring. Okay, so Saajid in that video says, and who are these people responding to me? Maybe referring to me. Yeah, of course, I'm not a YouTuber, and I'm not on these platforms. So, but then he makes an idea of being mashhur, not known, as a what's it called? As a how many subscribers or viewers you have. And by the way, subscribe to my page, inshallah. I will be putting out content, inshallah, bidnillah, for the sake of Allah, bidnillah. May Allah keep us sincere. So to say who's known and who's not known, and follow those who are known scholars. Okay, but you are going. Number one, I'm wondering who is the scholars you're taking from. You haven't made it clear. So these opinions on who's the Khawarij, is this Salih al-Fawzan's opinion or Ibn Uthaymeen or Albani? Who is it you are saying these opinions from? Because alhamdulillah, there's some videos which show these other ulama in their videos. They call criticize the rulers publicly, things like that. Albani, things like that. So there's been responses, but anyways. Yeah, you started on YouTube. Good for you, alhamdulillah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give the haqq success on YouTube. But to say who's known and who's not known, I don't know what city you're in. I'm in my city, north of the border. And alhamdulillah, people in my community, inshallah, did not know me as a brother. And the way in Islam you know somebody is to ask where he's from, the people in his town, how his behavior is, not YouTube stats or views. Because if that was the case, then Logan Paul would be the most mashhur person online.
Any and everyone can talk about Islam, so you need to be able to identify such rhetoric. And why is such rhetoric so dangerous? Well, first and foremost, it's because they're misrepresenting Islam and its teachings. However, without even getting into the complexities of all of that, think about what rebelling against rulers actually is. Imagine you or your children joining a group that's trying to overthrow a government. What do you think is going to happen to you? What have we seen happen in the past few decades when governments were overthrown? We saw some of the worst things that are imaginable. And people will hurl insults against people like me for saying this stuff and try to frame it as if we are just trying to protect the rulers. But no, we're trying to protect the Muslims for this.
Oh, you try to protect the Muslims. Well, alhamdulillah. That's like, and that's, at the end of the day, Brother Saajid, alhamdulillah, you studied in Medina, that's good. But of course, these events in the last 12 years since the Arab Spring, there's lots of issues involved, such as, intervention by the West, intervention by, the kingdoms, Qatar, Saudi, I suppose in Syria. We know what happened in Misr. So in terms of, protecting us, at the end of the day, these rulers, some scholars who are Salafi scholars or scholars who are known in Saudi Arabia, recently Abdullah Basfar, Sheikh Saleh al-Talib, these scholars have been put into prison. Of course, those scholars you probably disagree with, or you call them from, whatever names, like Sheikh Khalid al-Rashid, Hafidhahullah, Sheikh Abdul Aziz al-Turayfi. These ulama have been in prison, and of course in Saudi Arabia for a long time. So, which Muslims are you saying need to be protected? You're trying to prevent khuruj on the rulers. Is that what you're doing? As a matter of fact, in these countries, that's what you hear in the pre-written khutbahs issued by the government. The loyalty, you need to have the government, and I mean, not to say it's not just Medina, Azhar, Al-Qarawan. All these universities will present a version of Islam, which again, you can't even discuss the validity of the rulers, because the rulers have, this is their universities they're managing, and of course they have their influence in what they're teaching. So, I think it's when you say protecting Muslims, protecting from what? As a matter of fact, there are Muslims being thrown into prison by these rulers, and anybody that's going to speak against it, you're protecting them. These Muslims are sacrificing themselves to speak the haqq.
For the sake of argument, okay, just hypothetically for the sake of argument, let's say that we were in a situation where there were rulers who actually were outside the fold of Islam. Do you think you could overthrow them? What do you think would happen if you tried to overthrow them? Let's say somehow after all this fighting and killing and bloodshed, you were able to overthrow them. You think you would be able to replace them and be better than them? Have we not learned anything regarding what happened the past few decades when people tried this? And in closing, I just want to mention this allegation of being agents. The reality is, actually, who work for these different companies, the exact thing that they try to do is push the khariji ideology on individuals so that they can imprison them. Or if we want to get really conspiratorial, they'll push that ideology on them so people can actually make khuruj. And then they can destroy the country. They can destroy the people. And even though people might say, oh, we're not calling for khuruj, if you look at the things that they're saying, and the rhetoric lines up with groups like Hizb ut-Tahrir, one after another, after another, after another, you'll find the end game is, in fact, khuruj. Just think saying. And the rhetoric lines up with groups like Hizb ut-Tahrir, one after another, after another, after another. You'll find the end game is, in fact, khuruj. Just think about it. If they say that a Muslim ruler has to rule by the Sharia 100%, otherwise they're a disbeliever, and then they say that there is no country ruling by 100% Sharia, then obviously this means that all of the Muslim rulers, according to them, are disbelievers. If they are saying that...
Okay, we'll get more into that, but number one, Hizb ut-Tahrir does not say that. So again, that goes back into misrepresenting what others say. And unfortunately, Saajid, without having a discussion or online discussion, which you should have, Saajid, with those who are opposing your opinion or saying something different, don't say what their opinions are. That's called straw man argument. In terms of them, so in terms of these, in terms of what to do if an Islamic state is established, what are the rules and laws? What will be the system? How will you manage it? This is a group like Hizb ut-Tahrir, which has done extensive research and produced a constitution that details how the Islamic system will be when it's implemented. This is the type of work Hizb ut-Tahrir has done. So in terms of, and number two, I will bring some evidence I did in my last video on, a ruler can be ruling with un-Islamic laws and be invalidated in that role doesn't necessarily mean he's a kafir. So this is a straw man argument presented by Saajid.
That all of the Muslim rulers are disbelievers and they're pushing for the idea of establishing a Khilafah, then obviously they're taking you one step at a time toward khuruj, towards overthrowing these governments and trying themselves to establish a Khilafah. So even though they might say, oh, we're not making takfir of any specific ruler, or we're not calling for khuruj, the reality is the path that they are walking you down leads to all of that.
Yes, we are allowed to rebel against the rulers in the Muslim lands today.
Allah knows best. May Allah protect all of us. May Allah...
Okay, so I'm going to comment on this video, inshallah. So, Bismillah. So number one, there's lots of I don't know, Saajid. That's why discussion is important, because I think the problem is, when you live in a what's it called, echo chamber, you're not told what the other views are. You're not given a clear explanation. So Saajid, at best, he'll invite somebody who he thinks is a subject matter expert, and then they will give him the answers that he thinks is fit, and then he will respond to that. So obviously, I will go through certain points that I think is important, inshallah. Number one, basically about the Khawarij and things like that, just a quick briefer, because that seems to be one of his go-to attack points on others. So number one, let's look at the Khawarij. So in terms of the Khawarij, here's some university notes. Of course, there's more to it, but let me just read something I have here. So the first point in this chapter about Khawarij says, Arafa Sharastani, the scholar Sharastani, lets us know Khawarij, who are they? So it says, اعتبر فيه الخروج اعتبر فيه الخروج على الإمام المتفق عليه إمامته الشرعية خروجا في أي زمان من حيث يقول كل من خرج على الإمام الحق الذي اتفقت الجماعة عليه يسمى خارجيا، سواء كان الخروج في أيام الصحابة على أئمة الراشدين أم كان بعضهم من على التابعين بإحسان والأئمة في كل زمان. So it says here that the definition given by Sharastani on Khawarij is basically says whoever goes against an Imam al-Haq الذي اتفقت الجماعة عليه. So it's the Imam that the Muslims agree with. The Jama'ah is referring to the Ummah of Islam, right? That these rulers are the ruler that Muslims had ittifaq alayh, right? That he will rule. And again, this is talking about the Caliph of Muslims, not nation states, which are built on nationalism, built on secularism or monarchy. As I said, if Saajid, he went to Saudi Arabia today as an American, he cannot pledge his allegiance to that king and become one of his subjects, even with all the other ma'asi, he cannot, because this is a nation-state model. It's talking about Khawarij are the ones who go against a Imam al-Haq, those Imams, the Caliphs, who have the Bay'ah, who are ruling by the system of Islam. And then it says, such as those ones who went against the Khilafah al-Immat al-Rashidin in the time of the Sahaba, or those after them of the Tabi'een. So then it gives another definition, Ibn Hazm. So it says about the Khariji. It says, وَمَنْ وَافَقَ الْخَوَارِجِ مِنْ إِنْكَارِ التَّحْكِيمِ. So those who agree with the Khawarij with negating the Tahkim. So the Tahkim was between the army of Muawiyah and Ali. And basically Tahkim was an agreement made that the Quran will agree, or will go back to Quran Sunnah to stop this war between them. وَتَكْفِيرَ أَصْحَابِ الْكَبَائِرِ, and making takfir on those who do commit major sins. وَقَوْلُ بِالْخُرُوجِ عَلَى أَئِمَّةِ الْجَوْرِ, and those who go against the al-immat al-jawr, those imams who commit oppression. And again, this is an important point because, again, when you look at the evidences, right? This is a'immat al-jawr, oppressive imams, oppressive rulers. Yes, the Banu Umayyah, Banu Abbas, they had oppressive rulers. But the difference is in terms of their legal system, مَا قَامُوا فِيكُمْ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ, as they were ruling the Muslims with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Sunnah of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Meaning, if you go to the judge for a marriage dispute, or you go to the judge for a business dispute, they will judge you by the Quran and Sunnah. They're not judging you by the Western British law. They're not judging you by tribal laws. And these are laws that are called taghut by scholars like Muhammad Abdul Wahhab. He calls these the rules of taghut. So these legal systems other than Islam, like for example, if you go to Qatar or Saudi Arabia or Dubai and you have a dispute in a business transaction, are they going to give you the hukum, judge you by the legal system of Islam, or are they going to judge you by the legal system of another man-made law, kufri law, jahili law? This is the question we have here. So, it says that immatul jawr, yes, oppressive imams such as caliphs who can come, who may have committed some dhulm. ومن أصحاب الكبائر مخلدون في النار وأن الإمامة جائزة في غير قريش فهو خارجي. So he gives a definition. Those who say, another things they say, the Khawarij is they are the ones who commit, the Ashab al-Kaba'ir, those who commit major sins will be forever in the hellfire, and the Imama is allowed outside of Quraysh. So this is the definition of the Khawarij. So in terms of calling people Khawarij, on what basis do you call people Khawarij? On the basis of the fact like these groups like Hizb ut-Tahrir say that the rulers today who rule by laws, their constitutions, if you look at them, they're made with man-made laws. They're filled with British law or democratic system, suppose in Turkey or in Egypt or Bangladesh, Pakistan, democracy where the law is for the people by the people. These are systems of open kufr, meaning the system's basis is an aqidah other than Islam. It's based on, it's a hukm al-jahili. It's a jahil hukum system, right? So, or the monarchies in the Muslim lands, right? So, of course, anyone who rejects their validity, again, does it necessitate, when you say khuruj, what does that mean, right? What does it mean that, when there's going to be an effort to remove them, what is the method to do that? And Hizb ut-Tahrir, doesn't call for, in terms of the way to remove the current regimes in the Muslim lands. Hizb ut-Tahrir has a specific steps it follows, which is an intellectual and political struggle with the society and the ruling systems, which are placed and supported by the colonialist powers, America, Britain, France, etc. And Hizb ut-Tahrir has a methodology on how to remove these rulers, and it goes through the details, and which is the steps the Prophet ﷺ did in Mecca, where he did not use weapons to fight, to establish the state. So when it says, again, I think what Brother Mazin was saying is that, yes, these rulers are invalid. The ones who should remove them should be the people Ahlul Hal wal Aqd, those people of power and influence in these countries. Suppose Egypt, or suppose in Saudi Arabia, suppose in Pakistan or Bangladesh. The people who have the ability, they have the ability to remove a person who's ruling by kufr and the kufr system. Again, it's not dependent on one individual, because if one person dies, another person comes and rules by the same system. So again, there's two topics. One is the hal of the individual, and the other one is the system, the what they go to for rulings. And basically, Hizb ut-Tahrir says the problem is the systems that are ruling, and the way to change these systems and establish the system of Islam. And then you can have a good caliph or a bad caliph, a righteous caliph like Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, or you could have a caliph who does some dhulm, like the one who appointed Hajjaj bin Yusuf. Again, there's gray areas between them. What should we be our behaviors towards these rulers? And again, to say anyone who speaks against them is a Khawarij, a lot of the great scholars, Sa'id bin Jubair, a lot of the great scholars, they spoke against the rulers, even at that time. These were caliphs, right? So that's number one. Number two is that, anybody who rejects these rulers, he calls, what are the taghut systems, right? The taghut, what are they? So he says they are 5. Iblis, la'natullah, Iblis is a taghut. And then he said, وَمَنْ عُبِدَ وَهُوَ رَادٍ, whoever is worshipped and he's pleased with being worshipped. Or وَمَنْ دَعَا النَّاسِ لِعِبَادَةِ النَّفْسِ, and whoever calls people to worship himself. وَمَنْ ادَّعَى شَيْئًا مِنْ عِلْمِ الْغَيْبِ, and whoever claims knowledge of the unseen. وَمَنْ حَكَمٍ بِغَيْرِ مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهِ, and whoever rules by other than what Allah has revealed. This is what Muhammad Abdul Wahhab, who's the founder of the Salafi manhaj, right? Salafi dawah, right? Obviously, people call people Wahhabi in an offensive way. I don't do that, but this is a statement where he said that the taghut are including people who rule by other than Islam, rule by man-made laws. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, basically, yuriduna an yatahakamu ila taghut wa qad umiru an yakfuru bih, that they want to go and judge to the taghut, and they were commanded to disbelieve in it. So we can see that Muhammad Abdul Wahhab calls anyone who rules by other than Islam, وَمَنْ حَكَمَ بِغَيْرِ مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ هُوَ الطَّاغُوتُ. So again, is my question to Brother Saajid: do you consider him a khariji for that statement? Because again, this is an opinion, not my opinion, but this is an opinion that's there. And again, we see other statements. For example, Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he said, basically, من تحاكم أو حاكم إلى غير ما جاء به رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقد حكم الطاغوت. So whoever rules or goes to seek ruling from other than what was revealed to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is going to the rule of taghut. And then he said, وَالطَّاغُوتُ كُلُّ مَنْ تَجَاوَزَ بِهِ الْعَبْدُ حَدَّهُ. He said any slave goes beyond his bounds, he is a taghut. So in terms of this is some definitions given about the rulers who rule by other than Islam. They're called taghut by scholars who are respected. This is actually a book, a Salafi book I found online that talks about these topics. So basically, I have other quotes here. So basically, let me just see here. Basically, here's the thing. At the end of the day, I made in my last video, I spoke about the rulers and basically some statements from other ulama, basically talking about when the ruler is invalid, and not necessarily does he leave Islam. So there's another statement here. So here's by As-Sa'di, where he says, فَالْحُكْمُ بِغَيْرِ مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهِ مِنْ أَعْمَالِ أَهْلِ الْكُفْرِ. So ruling by Allah other than Allah has revealed is from the actions of the people of the kuffar, the people of kufr. وَقَدْ يَكُونُ كُفْرًا يَنْقِلُ مِنَ عَنِ الْمِلَّةِ. It could be the kufr that takes you out of the deen of Islam. وَذَلِكَ إِذَا اعْتَقَدَ حِلَّةً وَجَوَازًا. And that is if you believe it is allowed for you to do so. وَقَدْ يَكُونُ كَبِيرًا مِنْ كَبَائِرِ الذُّنُوبِ. And it could be a major of the major sins. وَمِنْ أَعْمَالِ الْكُفْرِ قَدْ اسْتَحَقَّ مِنْ فِعْلِهِ الْعَذَابَ الشَّدِيدِ. And or it could be a major sin from the kaba'ir of dhunub, ruling by what other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed. And that person deserves a severe punishment. And it is from the a'mal al-kufr to rule by what other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed. So this is Sa'di, who's a famous scholar, Salafi is also referred to, where he says ruling by what other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed is from the actions of kufr. Basically, there's more statements. Let me just pause it here. So basically, can see there's some statements where, obviously, these ulama and there's others who call the rulers who rule by other than what Islam has revealed as tawaghit, as taghut, and obviously, this is statements made, and again, you could check more fatwa from other previous Mufti Muhammad Ibn Ibrahim, who basically calls the rulers who rule by man-made laws kuffar. These are their opinions. I don't necessarily adopt them, but this is a problem Saajid and other people who call the Salafi method faces, because they're older ulama. They're very, very, very cutthroat, basically very, black and white. If you ally with the kuffar, you're from the kuffar. فَمَن يَتَوَلَّهُم مِّنْهُمْ فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ فَمَن يَتَوَلَّهُم مِّنكُمْ فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ. Whoever turns to them and becomes one of them. And these are some opinions that are there. And it's there, again, I don't necessarily agree with all these opinions, but these are certain things that Saajid needs to address, because is he calling these ulama of his past Khawarij as well? These are some of the identity crisis that does exist. So as for, my, this video, I did want to highlight it. Brother Mazen Abdul Azim is a close friend of mine, good brother, mashallah. Number one, you're not interested in debating him. That's a fact. You want to make videos and you put your expose, whatever, but you're not interested in a debate or discussion. I haven't seen you debate or discuss with anybody. You like to make videos on people, and you have some viewers and followers, and then they basically cheer you on. Good for you. But I think if you want to bring the evidences, we could talk with the evidences. I brought some evidences in my last video on what does it mean, ma aqama fikum as-salah, as long as. So Brother Mazen Abdul Azim has more content and lots of videos and details on this topic. So the thing is, again, Saajid, you should have a discussion. I think the Brother Mazen is ready to have a discussion with you. I'm willing to have a discussion with you as well, but again, you don't recognize people without large following count. So inshallah, working on that bidnillah. But again, the opinions of Hizb ut-Tahrir are very clear cut. Number one, the rulers are invalid because number one, these ahadith that refer to having the sword and fighting the rulers, again, they're contextualized when there's a caliph who takes the bay'ah, and then after that, after he takes the bay'ah and the kitab and sunnah, not a nationalistic state but an Islamic state, a Khilafah state, and then he turns away from the ruling. Then the ahadith talk about advising him privately, talking to him. And then if he doesn't, then, you may publicly talk about, what he's doing. And then if that doesn't work, then, again, there's steps to that. It's sort of like with marriage, if there's a marriage contract, and there's problems, fa'iduhun, give advice. If not advice, then, udribuhun, or leave the beds. And then, udribuhun, I don't want to get this video flagged, right? So, these are, certain steps that are there to deal with the wife that is not listening to you. So there's certain steps that are there to deal with the ruler who does not rule by Islam, who started to rule by Islam, but then he started to deviate from that, such as implementing a law that is a kufri law. But as for rulers who completely rule by another system, another sharia, other than Islam, this is the reality of the rulers today. So you talk about obedience to people who do not represent us at all, who do not represent Islamic system at all. And this is called shari'iyatul nizam, the legal status of the system, which you need to research and look into. This is what groups of Hizb ut-Tahrir has spent effort looking into. Sheikh Taqi al-Nabahani, rahmallah, who's an Azhar graduate, Qadi in Palestine. He looked into these issues and he gave rulings on these realities. So you need to have mujtahid who looks at these evidences and studies them. So I'll make a detailed video on, inshallah binillah, qariban, on the details on what makes a ruler valid in the first place. The bay'ah, shari'atul nizam, what is the Islamic system, and then of course there's the situation of the ruler. This is one problem, Saajid, and not just Saajid, but the many ulama they face is they do not see that the open kufr is referring to the systems that are un-Islamic, the rules of taghut, the rules of the laws and the legal system, the fundamental basis of these states are not Islamic. So therefore the ahkam related to the rulers do not apply to them, and the obligation is to bring about a state that rules by Islam, and then these ahkam apply to that reality, including rebellion against the rulers. There's a hikmah in that, where if the ruler is supposed to rule by Islam and he turns on it, then the people around him or the armies, make sure they correct that ruler. As of right now, Hizb ut-Tahrir has a specific method on how to establish the Khilafah. If you go into this book, Methodology of Hizb ut-Tahrir, it looks at the steps Rasulullah ﷺ spent to establish the state. He did 3 steps in Mecca. Number 1, he cultured a group, established a Sahaba who understood Islam, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, understood the meaning of what is the taghut, فَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ وَيُؤْمِنْ بِاللَّهِ, or rejects the taghut and believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala truly, rejecting idols, rejecting the customs of the forefathers, rejecting man-made ideas and systems and laws, and exclusively referring to Allah. That's one. Number 2, Rasulullah ﷺ interacted with society with what ideas they had currently. Now, this time it was, unsur akhaka zaliman aw mazluman. Help your brother, whether he's the zalim or the mazlum. And then Rasulullah put it, change the meaning, which is saying that help your brother, if he's a zalim, by stopping him from his dhulm. This idea of jahiliyyah, the Arabic, national, tribal hamiyya relationship. Islam came and challenged that, the idol worship, taking idols as God. These idols are set up by the leaders of Quraysh, and the leadership of the Arabs. So Rasulullah challenged all those belief systems and showed why Islam is superior. That's what Hizb ut-Tahrir does, exposes the capitalist, secularist, liberal system since it was established in the 1950s, alhamdulillah, till today. And it works in countries like Palestine, in Syria, in Bangladesh, Pakistan, in the Muslim lands. So a lot of people say, well, why are you sitting in the West? Yes, Muslims are in the West. Hizb ut-Tahrir is also in the West, talking to the Muslims here locally. And then finally, what Hizb ut-Tahrir says is that, after the interaction, Rasulullah ﷺ was commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to go to the tribes. And there's a narration where Ali radiallahu anhu said when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded the Prophet ﷺ to present himself to the Arabic tribes, me and Abu Bakr went with him to Mina. So Hizb ut-Tahrir seeks the nusra from Ahl al-Hal wal-Aqd, or the people of influence and power in the Muslim lands, to look at Islam, give support to the Islamic, Islam as a system, the Khilafah system, which Islam is the only system allows, and then establish the Sharia and the state. And this is through the process of getting the nusra, which the Aus and Khazraj gave to the Prophet ﷺ. This is, in short, what Hizb ut-Tahrir does. So in conclusion, I would say, Saajid, I'm not a big fan of his style, but again, he may just be, misinformed, and that's a result of not having discussion with the people. I don't know where he is in America, but if he's ever in Canada, in Toronto, in Toronto area, come meet some of the people you're disagreeing with. If you just say, well, you're deviant, I'm not going to sit with you. Well, even, that's basically what it is you basically cancel individuals. You don't want to talk to them anymore. And then you're stuck in your echo chamber and you don't have the opposing opinions. Again, there's a whole discussion on the validity of the rulers. In my last video, I show why iqamatul salah is not just prayer, but rather iqamatul deen, establishing the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, such as what Imam al-Qari, Imam al-Qurtubi, Ibn Taymiyyah, Imam al-Nawawi say open kufr. What does that actually mean? And it all refers to ruling a system that's other than Islam is not permissible for Muslims to have. And to take one or two evidences and interpret them to what makes sense for you is not fair. There's verses in the Quran that if we just take that and interpret it how we will, that's not fair. Mujtahid, the scholar, needs to look at all the evidences and come to a conclusion. Alhamdulillah, Hizb ut-Tahrir has ulama such as Sheikh Taqi ibn Bahani rahimahullah, or Abdul Qadim al-Zulum rahimahullah, or the Amir of Hizb ut-Tahrir today, Sheikh Ata Abu Rashta, who look into these issues, look at the evidences, because there's other evidences such as Ma qamu fikum kitab Allah, that obey and listen to the Abyssinian slave whose head is like a raisin, as long as he established in you the book of Allah, the kitab Allah, ma yaqudukum bi kitab Allah, as long as he leads you by the book of Allah. So, and statements of Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Kathir about the Mongols, who had a legal system called the Yasiq, which was a mix of Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, and they were the opinion that these people were kuffar and they need to be fought, even though natiqa walau natiqa bi la ilaha illallah bi shahadatain, even if they say la ilaha illallah. Right? Now, Hizb ut-Tahrir doesn't make takfir on these rulers, but says the systems they implement are systems of kufr. Their basis is a kufri basis, such as democracy, or such as capitalism in the economic system, such as the monarchies, is in the sense that the ruling belongs to a family, and they are the ultimate law giver of all the laws above Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are kufri ideas, and this is what we need to discuss and debate with. Otherwise, if Joe Biden convert to Islam, would Saajid call him the Amir al-Mu'mineen, right? Just because he accepts Islam, or is that make him Amir al-Mu'mineen just because he's Muslim? No, there's a system that's there. So these are detailed discussions. Inshallah, inshallah, hopefully this reaction benefits. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us hidayah, guidance to what is true, what is the haqq. And again, I invite Brother Saajid to have a discussion with Brother Mazen. Inshallah, I think he's always down to have a discussion. He's going to probably make a video as well. But this is what I made. Bidnillah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reach us to the haqq and guide us to the truth. Walillah alhamd, fil ula wa fil akhirah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.